There comes a time in everyone's life when the light fades, the laughter dies down, and you find yourself sitting in a room full of silence, with pain as your only companion. That moment when you're broken, when your dreams are shattered, when you're no longer the one who's clapped for, but the one whispered about. That moment doesn't just hurt your heart, it opens your eyes, and suddenly the masks start to fall. The people who once cheered for you start disappearing, the ones who called you family stop returning your calls, and the ones who promised to stay, they become strangers with familiar names. At first, you blame yourself. You wonder what went wrong. Why didn't they show up? Why didn't they check in? But with time, you learn something powerful. Your lowest moment was never a punishment. It was a revelation. It showed you who was real and who was just around when the sun was shining. It stripped away the noise, the fakes, and the pretenders. It showed you that love isn't about words. It's about presence. It's about the friend who sat beside you without saying anything, but made you feel seen. It's about the one text that said, "I'm here," when the world walked away, and then you rise, not because someone lifted you, but because the pain pushed you. You stand. Not because they believed in you, but because you found the strength to believe in yourself. And you learn beautifully and painfully that not everyone is meant to stay. Some are lessons, some are blessings, and a few rare souls, they are lifelines. So if you're at your lowest right now, don't be afraid of losing people. Be thankful for the clarity, because from this point on, you don't just see who people are, you know who you are. And that is the beginning of a stronger, wiser, and unshakable you. Hard times don't change people, they reveal them. This simple sentence carries the weight of countless experiences. Tears shed in silence and the quiet strength built in moments of solitude. It's a truth that doesn't need to be screamed to be understood. It just needs to be lived. Because when life hits you the hardest, when everything feels like it's falling apart, that's when the real character of people around you begins to surface. Not just others, but yours too. When things are going well, when your life is blooming, you're surrounded. Laughter is loud, support is constant, and everyone wants to be around a light that you emit. People love sunshine, they love warmth, ease, and celebration. But what happens when the skies turn gray? What happens when your smile is replaced by silence and your victories by struggles? That's when the layers peel back. That's when you begin to see people not for who they pretend to be, but for who they actually are. In those hard times, something extraordinary happens. You start noticing the shift in tone, the reduction in check-ins, the absence in presence. People who once made time for you suddenly become busy. The ones who used to be first to cheer for you now become spectators in your pain, watching from a distance, silent, indifferent, or sometimes even secretly relieved. Not because they're bad people, but because your struggle is uncomfortable for them. It reminds them of their own fragility. It forces them to confront emotions they don't know how to handle, and so they pull away. But here's the thing, those hard times don't create that distance. They just reveal that it was always there. The truth is, some people were never really with you. They were with the version of you that was convenient for them. The version that was successful, happy, giving, laughing. The version that asked for nothing and gave everything. But when you became the one in need, when your light dimmed, they didn't know what to do with your darkness, so they left. Or worse, they stayed, but only to watch. On the flip side, there are those few, very few, who show up when the world walks out. People who check in, not to gossip, but to genuinely ask, "Are you okay?" The ones who sit with you in your silence, who don't need explanations to understand your pain. They don't need anything in return for their loyalty. They just care. And you see them more clearly because now there are no crowds to blow your vision. When you fall alone. But in that fall, you start to see who's willing to come down and sit beside you in the dirt, not out of pity, but out of love. It's one of life's cruelties and blessings rolled into one. Your worst moments are also your most honest mirrors. They reflect back to you the authenticity of every connection you hold. You realize how fragile relationships built on convenience are. You begin to understand that not everyone clapping for you is happy for you, and not everyone smiling in your presence is rooting for you. Some people are just there because it's easy, and when it's no longer easy, they choose the exit. But instead of letting that realization harden your heart, let it cleanse your circle. Let it guide you to protect your peace. Because once you've seen the truth, you can't unsee it. And once you know who's real, you no longer waste energy on who's not. The beauty in all this pain is that you become more aligned with yourself. You stop chasing validation from people who only liked the easy version of you. You stop trying to explain your pain to people committed to misunderstanding you. And you start honoring the few who truly matter, the ones who show up, the ones who stay, the ones who don't flinch when your life gets messy. You don't need an army, you don't need applause, you need truth, you need loyalty. You need people who are not seasonal, because loyalty isn't tested when things are good. It's proven when things are at their worst. And when someone chooses to stay, love, and support you at your lowest, that's not just friendship, that's sacred. So when life brings you to your knees and people around you begin to shift, don't panic. Just observe. The masks will fall, the illusions will break, and what will be left is the truth. Not a truth created by hard times, but a truth finally revealed by them. Your lowest moments act as a mirror, reflecting the truth of relationships. When life is easy and things are falling into place, everyone seems to fit. Conversations flow, laughter fills the room, and relationships feel effortless. You're surrounded by people who seem to care, who cheer you on, who celebrate your wins. But all of that changes the moment you hit rock bottom. Suddenly, the warmth grows cold. The smiles fade, the voices quiet down, and you're left staring at a mirror. One that doesn't just show your face, but the truth about every relationship you've ever known. In the depths of your despair, when you're stripped of your strength, when your light isn't shining and you have nothing left to offer, this is when people's true intentions surface. Some disappear like smoke. Some pretend not to see your struggle. Others act like your pain is an inconvenience, something that disrupts the comfort of their lives. You notice the hesitation in their words, the distance in their responses, and the silence that screams louder than any goodbye. The relationships that once felt solid begin to feel fragile. And you begin to question, were they ever real? Or were they built on the version of you that was whole, successful, and unbroken? It's a bitter truth to face, but it's an honest one. Your suffering becomes a filter, separating the genuine from the conditional. It shows you who was there for you and who was there for what you gave them. Because when you can no longer give, when you have nothing left to offer but your brokenness, only the real ones remain. And it's not always dramatic. Sometimes it's subtle. A lack of messages, plans that never materialize, promises that remain words. You realize that people who said, "I'm here for you no matter what," really meant, "I'm here for you when it's convenient." That mirror doesn't lie. It reflects every detail, even the ones you tried to ignore for so long. It reflects the one-sided efforts, the emotional labor you carried alone, the fake support masked in shallow concern. But it also reflects beauty, the kind that hides quietly during your brightest days. Because when everything is stripped away, you finally see who truly values you, the ones who don't need you to be okay in order to love you, the ones who show up, not with solutions, but with presence. The ones who sit beside you in the darkness and simply say, "I'm not leaving." They don't require you to be perfect. They don't get scared by your silence or irritated by your sadness. They meet you where you are and they stay. These moments redefine what love, loyalty, and connection really mean. You begin to understand that support isn't about loud gestures. It's in the quiet acts. The check-in texts when everyone else has forgotten you. The unspoken understanding when you can't find the words. The simple, "I've got you," when you feel like you're drowning. That mirror reflects the soul of your relationships. It separates the fair weather friends from the storm chasers, the ones who come running, not away from your pain, but into it, just to hold your hand. It hurts to see people for who they truly are, especially when you've loved them deeply. It stings when the people you do anything for are the first to walk away when you need them most. But in that heartbreak, there is clarity, there is freedom. You stop romanticizing those who only loved your light and start appreciating the rare souls who don't flinch in your shadow. The mirror doesn't just show you others, it shows you yourself. It forces you to confront your own expectations, the way you've been giving without limits, the way you've tolerated less than you deserve. It teaches you that not everyone deserves access to your heart, especially those who vanish when it needs the most care. Your lowest moments become sacred, not because of the pain they bring, but because of the truth they uncover. It's in the rubble of your lowest point that you start building again, this time on truth, on honesty, on realness. You stop chasing validation from those who never truly saw you. You stop begging for love from those who only loved a version of you. And you start healing not just from your situation, but from every false connection that your pain exposed. Your lowest moments are powerful, not because they define you, but because they reveal what really surrounds you. They hold up a mirror that doesn't show illusion, it shows truth. And once you see that truth, you never forget it. You carried it with you like a compass, guiding you toward better connections, stronger bonds, and a deeper understanding of who you are and who deserves to stand beside you. The silence and distance during your pain often speak louder than any words. There is something deeply revealing about the quiet that fills the space where comfort should be. When you are hurting, when your heart is heavy, your days are long, and your nights are even longer, you start to notice not just who says what, but who says nothing at all. You notice who stays silent, not out of respect, but out of absence. And that silence can cut deeper than the pain you are already carrying. When you are going through something heavy, you expect, maybe even hope, for people to show up, to be there, to offer a kind word, a comforting presence, or just their time. But sometimes, the people closest to you become the quietest. They withdraw. They fade into the background. They grow distant, as if your pain makes them uncomfortable, as if your struggle is too heavy for them to acknowledge. You watch it happen, and at first you make excuses. Maybe they're busy. Maybe they don't know what to say. Maybe they think giving you space is helping. But as the days go on and the silence grows louder, it becomes harder to ignore. Their absence starts to speak. And what it says is this: I'm not here, not because they can't be, but because they choose not to be. That kind of silence isn't neutral, it's a message, a painful one. It tells you everything you need to know about your relationship with them. It says that maybe your connection was more fragile than you realized. It says that maybe your pain is invisible to them, or worse, irrelevant. And then comes the distance, not just emotional but physical too. People who once shared your joys suddenly don't have time for your tears. The phone doesn't ring, the texts stop, the invitations vanish. You find yourself walking alone in a moment where you thought you'd be surrounded. There is no greater loneliness than the kind you feel when people who know you are suffering choose silence instead of support, and no words are needed. They've already said everything through their absence. But here's the thing, that silence, that distance, it's revealing. In that space where someone's comfort should have been, you start to see the truth. You start to realize who genuinely cares and who is only there when things were good. It's easy to be present in someone's life when everything is bright and joyful. It's easy to join the celebration, but it takes something deeper, something more real to stay when the light goes out. When all someone has to offer is pain, sadness, or silence in return. People often say actions speak louder than words, but in times of pain, it's the inaction that screams. It's the silence that echoes. It's the message that comes not through what's said, but what isn't. And no matter how much we try to rationalize it, the truth becomes impossible to deny. If they wanted to be there, they would be. If they truly cared, they would reach out. If they understood the weight of what you're carrying, they'd help you hold it, even if just for a moment. Yet somehow, even in that silence, you learn. Explaining expectations, some conditional, some performative, some built on conventions, not commitment. Even in that silence, you learn, but you perform. You come to terms with the kind of connections you had. Some performative, some built on conventions. And slowly, you stop asking why they didn't show up, why they couldn't check in, why their presence disappeared when you needed it most. You stop expecting because the silence gave you your answer. In the stillness of those painful days, you begin to hear something else, your own voice. You hear your inner strength rising through the quiet. You hear your own footsteps walking through the loneliness, proving you can make it, even without the ones you thought you needed. You start finding peace not in who stayed, but in who didn't. Because the absence of the wrong people often creates space for the right ones. That silence and that distance can leave scars, yes, but it can also give you clarity. It can help you set boundaries. It can help you stop overgiving to people who disappear when the giving gets hard. It helps you see the difference between someone who's close by convenience and someone who's close by choice. And above all, it teaches you that presence is not about proximity, it's about effort. It's about who shows up for you, not just when you're shining, but when you're shattered. So while silence and distance may hurt, they also illuminate. They point out what words sometimes hide. They reveal the depth or lack of connection, and though painful, they give you one of life's most powerful lessons. Real love, real loyalty, real friendship does not vanish in hard times. It leans in, it listens, and it speaks, not always with words, but with presence. Your downfall isn't the end. It's the start of discovering your worth and your real tribe. It's hard to see that when you're in the middle of the wreckage, when everything you built crumbles, when people walk away, when life seems to pull the ground right out from under your feet. It feels like an ending, a painful, humiliating, devastating end. You feel exposed, vulnerable, alone. You look around and suddenly the people who celebrated your highs are nowhere to be found. The ones who said, "I've got your back," are quiet. The cheers fade into whispers, and the crowd you thought was yours disappears into the background. But in that silence, in that collapse, something unexpected begins to form. The beginning of the real you. Because your downfall, as brutal as it feels, has a purpose. It strips away the illusion of safety, the layers of performance, and the masks you wore to belong. It removes everything that was never truly aligned with your spirit. The relationships that weren't rooted in truth begin to dissolve. The roles you played to be accepted no longer fit, and the version of you that lived for validation starts to fade. It's terrifying, but it's also cleansing, because once everything falls apart, you can finally begin to rebuild, not for others, but for yourself. In that lonely, quiet space where your ego is shattered and your identity feels broken, you start to discover your worth. Not the worth given to you by praise, approval, or success, but the kind of worth that lives inside you, the kind that was always there even when no one saw it. You begin to understand that your value doesn't disappear with your status. Your essence doesn't lose its meaning because you've failed or fallen. If anything, it becomes clearer, stronger, more real. You start to look at yourself differently, not through the lens of who applauded you, but through the eyes of the person who survived the storm. And as you stand in that truth, something else starts to shift. You begin to attract people who see you, not just your highlight reel, but your heart. In that truth, you see not just your highlight reel, but your wounds. People who don't flinch at your flaw, people who don't turn away from your mess. They may not be many, but they're real. They show up without expectations. They stay without needing you to perform. They love you in your brokenness, not in spite of it, but because of it. These are your people. This is your tribe. The funny thing is, you don't usually meet them at the top. You meet them in the valleys, in the pain, in the stillness, in the quiet moments after everyone else has left. You find them in places where authenticity lives. And once you do, you realize they were never drawn to your image, they were drawn to your soul. They didn't come for what you could give. They came because of who you are when there's nothing left to offer but truth. This tribe doesn't need you to be fixed. They don't need you to have all the answers. They just need you to be real. They remind you of your strengths when you forget it. They sit with you in silence when words are too heavy. They see the beauty in your scars. They don't run when things get hard. They reach for your hand. They're not impressed by your titles or your accomplishments. They're moved by your resilience, your honesty, your fight to rise again. And so, your downfall becomes the doorway to everything that matters. It becomes the catalyst for finding your voice, your courage, your boundaries, and your people. It's not the end. It's the awakening. It's the moment your life begins to align with your truth. It's the moment you stop begging for crumbs and start demanding a seat at your own table. It's the moment you stop shrinking to fit into rooms that were never built for you. You learn to walk away from those who only stayed for the good times. You learn to close doors that were held open by fear, not love. You learn to honor yourself, to protect your energy, to stop giving the best parts of you to people who never deserved you. And you do it not out of bitterness, but out of clarity. Because once you've been at your lowest and seen who stood by you, you never forget, you never unsee, you never settle again. So no, your downfall isn't your defeat. It's your discovery. It's the moment you stop living for appearances and start living in alignment. It's where your true story begins, the one where you don't just survive, but rise stronger, wiser, surrounded by truth and rooted in self-worth. It's not the end, it's the introduction to your real life and your real tribe.